Okay, so for those of you that aren't familiar, this is the inside of the Fieldbook app. So when you do get credentials, you'll become very familiar with this. So if you can see my iPad screen, in the top left corner are my initials, KL. So if anyone is following along on their iPads, you would see your initials there. So if you tap on your initials there, this is your user menu in Fieldbook. So you have 5 options here. Switching to night shift. What you do typically in Fieldbook every day, it's just on a 24-hour clock. If you are ever working night shift, and we'll hit this a little more when we get into creating a report, but if you're ever working night shift, you want to come in here, click your user menu, and select night shift. And that way, when you go to build your report at the end of the day, it's going to pull in everything from essentially the night part of your shift and that morning part. So again, we'll hit that a little bit later when we get to reports, but do know that if you are working night shift, you want to come into the system and click night shift. The next option down there is try sync now. That essentially every 5 to 15 minutes, whatever you capture on the iPad is going to sync to the web. So let's say if Les was looking at it, or anyone that needs to access to the project, anytime it syncs from your iPad to the computer, everyone else is able to see what's on the project. So like I said, that's typically every 5 to 15 minutes. But if for whatever reason you want to force sync or things aren't syncing, you can click that try sync now button and it will force a sync through. The next 2 options there, send log data to support and email to support, kind of go hand in hand. You can reach out to me anytime with Fieldbook questions, and I'll make sure everyone has my contact information at the end of the call. But if there's ever a technical issue that you're having with the app, if you click that email support button, an email box will pop up and you can contact HeadLight's technical support team anytime. They may ask for your log data. It's kind of just a back-end troubleshooting file. And to send that to them, you can just click that third option, that's send log data to support. And then the last option on this user menu is logging out. Typically at the end of every shift using the Fieldbook app, you want to log out, and then that way the next morning you'll log back in. Logging out and logging back in, if there's ever any updates to the project, if there's any ever new line items or anything like that added, logging out and logging back in is what's going to kick that through to your iPad. So definitely a best practice to get into that every day. So if anyone's following along on your iPad, to close that user menu, you can just tap away. And then if you see the left-hand side of my iPad, that top blue binocular says journal. So that's where we're going to start today in the journal. The next tab down is spreadsheets. That's really where you're going to keep track of the physical count of who's on site in terms of personnel, what's on site in terms of equipment. That's where you'll track your quantities for any of your line items. And then that's also where we will track weather. And then the next tab down is report. So like I said, we'll get into that a little bit later. The 4th tab down, forms, we're going to skip for today. The 5th tab down there is Academy. And if you see that, it's like a little graduation cap. If you click on Academy, this may be very helpful, especially to those that are just starting out with HeadLight. HeadLight Academy is really our how-to library, if you will, for how to do things in the Fieldbook app. So if you scroll through here, we even have some iPad 101 courses, but this is essentially everything we're going to go through today. And if you see there, it does say micro tutorials. None of these are very long videos or anything like that, but you can click into them. And again, you'll be more familiar with these terms after our call today. But definitely know that this is a resource for you as you start out. So I'm going to click that back to app in the top left corner. And then we are going to start in the journal. So as most of you know that are familiar with Site Manager, there are 7 things that you need to have every single day in HeadLight Fieldbook so that your HeadLight report successfully syncs to Site Manager. So those are the 7 things we're going to focus on today. So that's going to be your work hours, your general remarks, primary inspector, controlling work item, time charge comment, traffic control, and then staff detail. So really in the HeadLight Fieldbook app, if you see this green plus, if you click that, these are all the different observation types that you can take in Fieldbook. So you can take pictures or images, you can take weather observations, and you can create narratives. So those are the top three that we're going to focus on today, but you are more than welcome to utilize or practice any of these today. So the first one we're going to start with today is we'll take a weather observation. So if you select under that green plus, if you click weather, it's going to pull up a weather observation here for you. So I'm actually in Massachusetts right now, so I'm not located in Louisiana. So my weather may be a little bit different than yours, but this weather is pulled in from the nearest NOAA weather station. And you can see that everything in Fieldbook is dated and timestamped. So if you look at the top right of my weather observation here, it's February 8th, and it has the time. And then if you also look in the bottom right-hand corner, everything is geolocated in the system. So when you're out on the project sites, like I said, everything is dated and timestamped. And if you actually click into that longitude, latitude, it actually gives you your exact precise location. So again, this will be specific when you are on the project. Also with the weather, this is configurable. So like I said, it does pull in from the nearest NOAA weather station, but if for whatever reason, if it's inaccurate based on your location on the job site, you can change this. So for me right now, it is 34 degrees, but let's say it was a little bit cooler than that. I can tap on that 34 there and I can edit that. So let's say it's actually, 25 degrees. I can input that number there. And if I click done on my keyboard, that 35 then updates to 25. Where it says mostly cloudy here, it is mostly cloudy for me today. But if I click on that, I can actually scroll through. And let's say it's raining out. I can select that rain. And if I click that green check, that mostly cloudy then changes to rain. So the next observation type that we are going to take in Fieldbook will be a big one for you guys out in the field, and it's an image. So if I come back to my Fieldbook app, click that green plus, and I'm going to select image. You'll see on my screen, my camera comes up. So I'm just sitting at my desk. So once your camera comes up, to capture a picture in the Fieldbook app, click on that white circle, and it will take a picture for you. I need to clean my laptop a little bit, so sorry for the dust. But once you capture a picture in Fieldbook, you're actually able to mark that up and annotate it. So on the right side of my screen, if you see the blue pencil, if you click on that, you can actually draw on the photo. So let's say I want to circle my mouse pad because I need to clean it later. I can create a circle there. I can draw an arrow. So if you're out in the field taking a picture of any construction activity and you want to call attention to a certain part of the picture, you are able to mark that up and annotate it in Fieldbook. In addition to marking that up, you're also able to add text boxes to these images. So if you see in the bottom left-hand corner of my screen, that red A, if I click on that, you see this new annotation, that text box that pops up. So let's say I'm in the field and I am taking a measurement of something. Let's say I'm measuring my keypad, for example. I can now type in here, let's say that's 3 by 5. I'm able to mark that photo up even more and add a text to it. And then I'm actually able to move it down here. So if my PE or anyone is looking in on Fieldbook throughout the day, they could look in, they could see my image, and they would see that I'm highlighting this area and maybe that I'm taking a measurement. So anything that you do marking up this photo, like where I entered my 3 by 5, that measurement there, it's not searchable in Fieldbook. And I'll tell you what I mean by that in a second. But so for right now, as long as I'm okay with this picture, I'm going to click this green check. And then in the bottom left-hand corner, I'm going to click save. And if you see now, that picture is added to my news feed. So here's the weather observation that I just took, and then here is my picture. So you'll see, again, it's dated and timestamped in that top right corner, and then it is geolocated. And then if you see on the right-hand side of this image, you should see tag, contractor, line item, and equipment. We call these tags or labels in the system. And really, if you start here and if you click on that tag dropdown, here are those site tags that are really going to help us with site managers. So work hours, general remarks, primary inspector, controlling work item. These first 15 or so tags here, you're going to see all these tags on all the projects. And these are really just supporting tags, basically to help describe what's going on in the picture. So you'll scroll through these tags and you can familiarize yourself with them as you familiarize yourself with the Fieldbook app. But we have safety tags, we have as built. We do have some random tags in here because we're on a training project. So class, classroom, does not meet specifications. So let's say this picture of my iPad and that measurement does not meet spec. If I select that tag and tap away, it will add that tag to the system for me. So let's say I am the project engineer and I want to look in the system and see maybe what things on the project don't meet specifications. As long as the inspectors in the field are tagging those types of things, a PE or less or anyone in the office that's looking, you're able to search based on these tags. So if I pull down the search bar here, all the way over to the right-hand side, I can see where it says labels there. If I click that, these are all the labels on the project. So this is really something that, like I said, probably the engineers and people in the office will use, but the inspectors in the field, you are able to search as long as you are tagging. So we'll get into a little bit more with the tagging with the contractors, the line item, and the equipment. But if anyone has any questions on that, feel free to chime in. So the next tag that you're really going to want to use, every single picture in the system should be tagged with the contractor, let's say who's performing work there. So if you select this contractor dropdown, this is going to be every single contractor that is on the project. So again, that will be project specific. We're on a training project today. But so if you scroll through here, like I said, these are project specific. So let's say it's Campbell Construction that's performing work in this project. I can tag Campbell Construction there. And if I tap away, that adds that tag. So this is telling, anyone who's looking at this image right away, this picture does not meet specifications and Campbell Construction is the contractor. The next one you'll see over on that right-hand side is line item. So if you click on that line item area, again, all of the line items, when you select these on your live projects, are going to be specific to that project. So you can scroll through here and let's say I'll choose general excavation for this one. So if I select that general excavation tag and I tap away, I now know that Campbell Construction is performing general excavation and it does not meet specifications. This is just an example, so it may not be the best real world example, but associating these pictures with those tags tells anyone looking at your report or looking at this picture exactly what's going on. If there are any pieces of equipment used in this photo, if you click this equipment tag, these pieces of equipment were pulled right from Site Manager, so they should look familiar. But so you can select any pieces of equipment that are also in the photo. So for grins, just because they're right here, I'll select concrete paving machine. If there are two pieces of equipment in the photo, you are able to select multiple tags. So let's say there's a concrete paving machine and a concrete pump. I am able to select both of those tags. And if I tap away, it will add them for me. To make this image observation complete, if you see in the top left-hand corner of that, it says new image. That's the title of the image. So typically you do want to add a title to your image. So if I click that image, I can actually delete that, and you could title this, obviously specific to the picture, anything that's going on in the picture. So for grins for training today, I'll just title this Casey's Desk. But you're able to title this, like if you're at a certain location or whatever the work is being performed, you can type that in the title. And then there's also a description field here. So right above tag where it says add description, if you tap on that, that's a free entry field. So you're able to give any more supporting information, maybe that wasn't captured in a tag, in the tag contractor line item or equipment. You could add a description there. So I'll say clean your desk. But obviously, when you're out on the construction site, you can get as specific there as you need to. And the last piece of information I wanted to show you guys for images is if you see in the bottom middle of my image here where it says station and offset, if you click into those, you're actually able to track your station and offset. So your location, so wherever this picture was taken. So again, your keyboard will come up. I'm just going to throw in two numbers just to get something there, but you are able to put in the exact station and offset information. And if you click done, now anyone looking at this image knows exactly what time this was taken on site, what time that work was being performed, who was performing it, what line item was being worked on, and what pieces of equipment were used. So this really is what you want most all of your images to look like, with a title and all of those supporting tags. In addition to taking pictures live in the Fieldbook app, you're also able to add them from your iPad gallery. So if for whatever reason, if you have something on your iPad gallery, if I click that green plus, and if I select image again in that top left-hand corner, instead of capturing a live image, if you click that red X, you're actually able to upload from your gallery. So on the bottom middle of my screen, if you see where it says gallery, you can click gallery and then your iPad photo gallery will come up. So I'll choose this picture of my dog. She's usually sleeping in my desk behind me. And again, if I want to add annotations to this photo, just like I did to the live photo, I can. Or if I don't need to add any annotations to it, I can just click save and it then becomes a part of my newsfeed. So you're able to take live pictures or upload them from your iPad gallery. And then for this photo, again, I would want to go through, I'd want to add my tags, my contractor, my line item, and any equipment tags, and I would want to give that a title. So one other thing I wanted to show on these image observations is if you swipe left on these, that's another way where you can delete that, Rudy, that red trash can.
Oh, okay.
Is cloning, which we'll get into cloning a little bit later. But that green plus, so you're actually able to email anyone on, like if you wanted to email a picture or anything to anyone, if you click on that green plus, it's going to open an email for you. And if you click into this to, this is everyone that will have access to the project. So this is the training project. So most people at the DOTD are going to have access here, but again, it would be specific to your project. So let's say I wanted to email this picture to Les. I can select Les's email here, tap away, and then I could write an email to Les. Or maybe in this situation, it's my PE and something happened on site and I want to email it to them right away. Instead of having to text them the image or call them, you're able to email them right from your iPad. I won't email this picture of my dog to Les, so I'm just going to click cancel. But if you did want to email that, you could just click send there. So you, like I said, you are able to email right from the system. So any other questions on pictures before we move to our next observation type?
No.
Okay. Les, anything you wanted to add there on pictures or just any descriptions?
I think you covered it well. There's a couple things I would say. One is, well, really just one, and it really has to do with the email. When I used to use that in the field, I would also add my own email address in there because it does not go from your email account. And so you really don't have a record of it unless you add whoever's name you're sending it to and also add your own name, and then you get the email as well. So just something to keep in mind if it's, you're sending it, if it's just a easy little send to somebody just to show them something, that's fine. But if it's something you need record of, make sure you add yourself to that email.
Yes, good call out, Les. So let's say you did exactly like Les said, if you do email that picture, it actually comes from our support team's alias. So it would come from support@headlight.com. So like Les said, if you do want that record of it, you want to send it to yourself or CC yourself.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
Oh, I do have another thing. I know what I was thinking of now. On
Yeah.
the title of the observation, one thing, and Casey did a great job of explaining that. And yes, we really encourage you to title every observation that you have. One thing I found that makes it easier, or at least my old field office, I've seen some of the things they do, is you just title it like the one word of the thing you're working on. So let's say you are building a bridge and you're driving piles, right? That's the line item you're working on. Just name that piles. It's really simple, and gets the point across. Now, you're obviously like, that's not a standard that we have. It's just something easy to do. If you can't think of a name, hey, whatever you're working on, drop that in there. Sometimes you might want to name it something different if it's a trouble area where you're rejecting something that the contractor has done. It might deserve a different title, but anyway, that's just a little tip that's super easy to do and super easy to remember.
Awesome. Thanks, Les. Okay. So the next observation type that we are going to get into is narratives. So if you're still following along, click on that green plus. And here, go ahead and click narrative, which is that second option over to the right. So these narrative observations, these are free entry observations. So this is really where you're going to capture your work hours for the day, your general remarks, the primary inspector, the controlling work item, time charge comment, traffic control, and staff detail. So going down that list, we'll first start with work hours. So let's say whatever your work hours on the job that day are. So let's say that's 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. On my keyboard here, I can select 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So it's as simple as that. You can capture the work hours there. The title of this narrative, so similar to what Les was just saying with how you're titling the images, you want to title these narratives. So if I click that new narrative in here, I can type in work hours. So this would tell anyone, again, looking at your reports or your observations, that this narrative is for your work hours. And if you click done, the last thing you're going to want to do for your work hours is tag that. So if I click on my tag here, I'll see that first one there is work hours. So if I select that work hours tag, I can then pop off and that tag is there. Unless, this might be a silly question, but should they be tagging every contractor that's on site that day for work, or this is their work hours?
So that is the contractor's work items, and it
Okay.
is good if you want to tag the contractor there. That's a good practice to do. It's not 100% required, I guess is the biggest thing.
Okay.
Our system knows who the prime contractor is, and that generally the work hours go for them. Now, I have in the past um, did a couple of work hour observations, and you might want to capture the work items. I mean, I'm sorry, the work hours that your prime contractor was doing, and then work hours that a subcontractor was doing. if you're going to do the sub, I probably would not tag it with the O1 work hours. I'd probably just put it in general remarks to be
Okay.
there, but just something to keep in mind. So if you did want to tag both of them in the O1 work hours and separate them, then I would definitely tag a contractor on that one.
Okay. So exactly like Lex just said, if you are in the situation that you're tagging the contractor, if you come here, you could come in here and let's say Barber Brothers Contracting is the prime and I'm tracking their hours. I can select Barber Brothers here. And if I tap away, now I know that on February 8th, Barber Brothers worked from 8 to 4, and those were their work hours. The next narrative that we're going to get into, if you want to go ahead, we're going to create another narrative. So click that green plus and select narratives. This is going to be your general remarks section. So basically, it's just a summary of the day's project activities. So what happened on site? What were they doing? So here, again, it's just a free entry field. So I'm just going to type general remarks. And I'll just say what happened on site today. So again, here you definitely want to get very specific with what happened on site. If I click my green plus or my green check there, I can then add a title to this narrative. So I want to come back here and you'll probably want to call this general remarks. And then the last thing we're going to do, Rudy, let's see how you're doing. What would the last thing I want to do to this general remarks narrative be?
Save it.
The last thing I would want to do to this general remarks, what would it be?
Tag it.
Tag it. Gold star, Rudy. So I would just come in there and I would click that general remarks tag. And again, you can add any other applicable tag. So if you need to add a contractor tag, if you're tagging the contractors that were on site or that you're talking about in that narrative, you can add the line item tag, you could add equipment. So really, again, you get as specific as you need to, because these are going to be your general remarks, and this is what eventually will populate Insight Manager for the day.
Okay.
The next one that you are responsible for doing every day is going to be the primary inspector. So again, that's another narrative. If you come in here, you click that green plus, click on narrative. Really, for primary inspector, all you're responsible for entering here is yes if you are the primary inspector. So let's say I'm the primary. All you need to enter here is yes. You don't have to include any other words or punctuation in this piece. If you are not, let's say you're the secondary inspector, all you have to do here is enter no. So for this one, let's just say I'm the primary. I'll enter yes. And then I would want to just title that narrative primary inspector. And if I click done, the last thing I'd want to do here is just use that primary inspector tag. The next one we're going to want to do here is that controlling work item. So again, that's another narrative. So that's going to be your fourth narrative of the day. So if I click that green plus and I come here, here's where you want to enter that numerical code or the description of that line item. So off the top of my head, I'm just going to say 0001 because I can't think. But you could enter the numerical code and the description. So if like 001 is, let's say, clearing and grubbing, you could enter that there. That's your controlling work item for the day. And then if you come over to your tags here, you could tag controlling work item for that first tag. And if you tap off, then under the line item section, oh wow, it was clearing and grubbing. You could select that tag. So like if clearing and grubbing for that day was my controlling work item, I could select that tag here, tap away. And then the last thing I'm going to want to do is just give that narrative a title. And you can shorten the controlling. So you could just say controlling work. Oops, I spelled that wrong. controlling work item. Any questions so far on any of these four?
No.
Okay. So the next one you're going to get into is your time charge comment for the day. So if you click on that green plus and if you select narrative, here really again similar to whether or not you're the primary inspector, it's just a yes or no. Was time charged for this day? You would enter yes. If there was no time charge for that day, you want to provide the reason. So if it's a Sunday, you could put weekend. If there's, if it's hurricaning, you could put adverse weather, whatever it was. So let's say no, and then I want to say, no work performed, no work performed because of rain. Um, so again, like I said, if it's just yes, all you have to do is write yes. But if it's no, you do want to provide the reason for why no work was performed on that day. And then you'd want to come over to your tag. You'd want to select time charge comment. So if you can see my screen, type charge comment. And you could even add, if I want to go further than that, and I want to say, let's say it was an adverse weather, it was raining, you could select the adverse weather tag. And then the last thing I would want to do there would be title of time charge comment. So 2 more narratives here, and then we'll move on to our next one. But the next one you're responsible for every day is documenting the traffic control conditions, especially if there are any deficiencies. So I can click my green plus here. I can create a narrative. So here, like I said, you just want to document the traffic control conditions. So are traffic control devices in place? Yes or no? Is there a traffic control deficiency? Are the cones not out? Or anything like that? Traffic control in place. Or if there was a deficiency, that's definitely something you would want to note here as well. Traffic control may be something that you also take a picture of. If the traffic control devices are in place, take a picture of them in place. If they're deficient, you could take an image in Fieldbook of whatever's deficient there, and then it would be documented here along with your narrative. So I will save that. I'll scroll down here to click traffic control, and I'll change my narrative title. And then the last one is our staff detail. So this is where you're going to want to list out all of the DOTD personnel on the project that day. So if I click my green plus here and narrative, I could say, Rudy, will live on forever in the training project, but you could list out all the DOTD personnel here. So Rudy, Les, Austin, you would list out all the personnel on the project on that day. And then in your tags here, you're going to select staff detail, and under narrative, you could call that staff detail. So typically, these are the 7 narratives that you're going to need in the system every single day in order for your HeadLight report, which we'll create at the end, to sync to Site Manager. So are there any questions on those 7 narratives?
No.
Okay. So since you're responsible for creating these every single day, you can do what we call cloning here. So you're able to clone information forward from one day to another. So let's say I know my work hours for today. So if we're looking on my screen at this work hours tab, let's say I know that the work hours are going to be the exact same tomorrow. Instead of having to create this observation again tomorrow, give it a title, type in the hours, and tag it, if I swipe left on that observation, we looked at this a little earlier. Here you can delete it or email it. If you look at that blue bar in the middle, that's cloning. So if I click that blue bar, and then I scroll all the way to the top here, you see it copied that observation forward for me. So it's an exact copy. If I scroll down one more time and look at work hours at 10:30, I cloned that forward. So if I want to say change that date to tomorrow, I can come in here, I can click the date, and I could change that to tomorrow, February 9th. When I log in for tomorrow on February 9th, that work hour comment will be there. Let's say if for whatever reason the work hour changed from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., you can update it. But what it does is it brings all the information in that observation forward. So all your tags and any text that you write. And one other little tip and trick I want to show everyone, in addition to the cloning forward, is that if you see the blue select button on my screen right below where it says LADOTD Training 2.0, if you click that select button, let's say you want to add one tag to multiple observations. Let's say I want to add the same tag to controlling work item, staff detail, and traffic control. You see all three of those are now selected on my screen. And if you click this edit labels at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, all of your tags come up. So let's say I want to add the same contractor tag to every single one of these observations. Let's say I want to add coastal contractors. If I select coastal contractors LLC there and I tap away, you can see it added coastal contractors to all three of those observations. So we call that bulk tagging. So instead of having to individually tag all of those, you can apply the same tag to multiple observations. So let's say you have 3 pictures of a certain construction activity and it's clearing and grubbing, and it's the same contractor. Instead of having to go through and tag each observation individually, you can bulk tag. So again, that's clicking select. You can scroll through and select whichever observations you need. Click on edit labels, and then you could add, let's say, a line item tag there. And it adds that tag to all of the observations that you select. So any questions on anything so far in the journal? Okay. I'm going to click that green plus one more time. Today, we really just focused on taking a picture, the weather, and the narratives. But we do have multiple other observation types available. So if you see right below weather where it says video, the video observation is going to function very similar to the image. So your camera would come up, but if you need to document anything via video, you're able to do that. You can take a temperature reading. You can take a density measurement. There's a start-stop work observation that functions almost like a timer, if you will. So once everyone does actually get their HeadLight, their site manager, and their HeadLight credentials, you're all going to have access to this training project, and you're more than welcome to come in here and play around with any of these observation types. If you have questions on them, or if you want to know, how other people in the field use them, you're more than welcome to ask. But if you do want to play around with any of them in the training project, you're more than welcome. So any questions on anything we did in the journal, creating the observations, pictures, narratives, or weather?
I do have a picture question. If I wanted, remember that picture you took of your dog?
Yep.
On a completely different day, I wanted to pull that picture up, and I remember it was called Piles. How do I get to that picture?
Great question, Rudy. So on your iPad, if you click that search bar,
Okay.
You have multiple different ways to search. So if you see the date, do you see the date range on my
Yes.
computer? So you're able to filter by date. By default, when you click that search bar, the date is just today. But let's say, you wanted to know, like, if that picture of my dog was taken last week, you can filter and change the date. So if you know that our training was on February 8th, and let's say it's 2 weeks from now, Rudy, you could
Okay.
come in here and you can change the dates. And then what is then in your news feed is specific to that day. So I'll keep it for today, but let's say like you titled that image piles. Do you see the top, this search area here, Rudy, over on the left?
Right.
That's a free entry field. So if you know you titled that image piles, if I type in piles here and click search,
Ah,
it narrows that down to just that picture of my dog. So you can, on the training project today, we've probably taken 10 observations, but I'm sure as everyone on the call knows, some of these projects are 1 year, 5 years, 2 years. As long as you are titling these observations, you're able to pull that up in a matter of seconds. So in addition to searching by that keyword, Rudy. So that's anything in any of those free entry fields. So that's the title, the description, or even anything you write in those narrative fields. You're also able to search by those labels. So let's say
nice.
3 months from now, I want to know if
So,
what someone's general remarks were from a certain day. I could search for that day, and if I click the general remarks tag, now what's in my newsfeed is just specific to general remarks on that day. So that's really where the tags come into place. The more information that you're able to put in up front, you're able to recall this information very quickly via the search feature.
nice. Thank you.
No problem. And Rudy, let's say you're the primary inspector on the job, but there's also a secondary inspector. If you see my name in the top right there, we're under user. If you click that, oh, I think my iPad just froze, but if you click that, it will give you a list. Oh, my iPad did freeze.
Yeah.
So that shouldn't happen, but let me get back to that search bar. If you click that, it's going to be everybody on the project. So let's say you're on the project and you're covering for less, if you will. You
Okay.
could come in here. Oh, it's going to freeze again. Um, Sorry about that, guys. But let's say you select another user's name from that menu. You could then say, if Les covered for you last week and you want to know what he did last week or what was on the project, you can come in there. You could search for Les's name. You could change the date to last week, and you could see all of his pictures, all of his comments, who was on site. So the
Oh,
search feature within the system is very powerful. But it's powerful based on the information that you put in. So as long as you're adding your tags, your descriptions, and things like that, you're able to pull it up very quickly. So the next section I wanted to get into is our spreadsheets tab. So for anyone following along on that left-hand side, if you click into spreadsheets, you can see that there are 4 spreadsheets that you are responsible for every day. So like I said, the spreadsheets are really the physical count of who's on site in terms of personnel, what's on site for equipment, and then this is where you're going to track your work item or your line item quantities, in addition to weather. So if you see on my screen here, weather is that first tab. So if you come back to your trusty green plus, if you click that, this is another type of a weather observation in the system. So every single day you are responsible for tracking the high temperature, the low temperature, the AM conditions, and the PM conditions. So if I click into that high temperature field, let's say my high temperature for today is 40 degrees, which that's unfortunate, but that is the high temperature
yeah.
for me today. If I click done, let's say the low temperature is 12 degrees, you can input that there. And then for your AM conditions and your PM conditions, you're going to get these drop downs. So let's say in the morning it was snowing. Luckily here it wasn't, but let's say it was. And then in the PM conditions, it was partly cloudy. That's what you want to capture in this weather observation. And then if you scroll over here, you're going to see those same tags that you saw in the journal: tag, contractor, line item, and equipment. Les, if you're still there, are they responsible for tagging the contractor that's on the prime here every day, or is that not necessary?
No, that's not necessary
Okay.
for this weather observation. Really, all you need is your AM and PM conditions there,
Okay.
and your temperatures.
Okay. So this, thanks, Les. So
Yep.
this would be a complete weather observation. So every day you just want to come in here, capture the high, capture the low, and put in those AM and PM conditions. So the next spreadsheet we're going to get into is contract personnel. So if you want to click on that contract personnel spreadsheet, this is where you're going to track who is on site and actually how long they were on site for. So in the contract personnel, we'll do a couple observations here. So if you want, go ahead and click that green plus, say 3 times. So you create 3 observations. And then you can see on my screen here where it says personnel type. If you click in that personnel type, that's a drop down. So again, all of these personnel types are pulled from Site Manager. So let's say, and you can scroll through here and see what all of them are. But let's say there's on site today, there was a asphalt milling crew. I can select that personnel type. And then in the number of people, let's say there were 5 people in that crew. I can select 5 there. And then if I click done, let's say that asphalt milling crew worked 8 hours. And then I could select done. I'm going to skip the tags for now and I'll show everybody why. But so let's scroll back here and let's track our second personnel type. So for this personnel type, let's say I want to add in, for grins, we'll just select carpenters. And let's say there are 2 carpenters on site. And let's say they worked also 8 hours. And then for our third personnel type, let's say we are tracking an asphalt roadway crew. Let's say there were 4 of them on site, and let's say they worked 8 hours. Here's where I've captured the type, the number of people, and the hours worked. If you scroll over here, you are able to select whether or not, like if you're just tracking an individual person, you could check off whether they were a supervisor or not. This remarks field, that's a free entry field. So if there's anything additional you want to capture about that crew or that person, you are able to write it in this remarks field here. But then, of course, you want to be tracking which contractor they are associated with and maybe what line item they're working on. So let's say all 3 of these observations, let's say they're from the same contractor. Similar to how you can bulk tag in the journal, you can do the same thing in the spreadsheets. So let's say I click select here and my asphalt milling crew and my asphalt roadway crew are from the same contractor. If I select both of those options and I click edit labels here, let's say they're both from Barber Brothers, I can select that Barber Brothers tag. And if I tap off and if I scroll over now, it added that tag to both of those observations for me.
Mm.
So bulk tagging, like you may be tracking 10 different personnel types on a job in a given day. There may be 3 contractors on site or 2. You are able to use that bulk tagging feature to add the same tag to multiple different observations. So like if there's 3 Barber Brothers crews, 2 Barrier Brothers, that's where you can use the bulk tagging to save a little bit of time. So any questions on tracking personnel in this spreadsheet?
None.
Okay. So the next area that we're going to get into is equipment. So on the top of my screen, if I navigate over to that equipment tab here, again, I can come to my green plus and let's say we're going to track 2 pieces of equipment. If I see where that equipment is, if you click that, again, these are those same pieces of equipment that are tags in the journal area. So you can scroll through here and let's say I'm tracking an aggregate spreader. I can select aggregate spreader there. If I scroll over here, that first column you're going to want to fill out is number of pieces. So let's say there were 2 aggregate spreaders on site. I can input 2 there, but let's say only one of them was used. That's the differentiator between number of pieces on site and number used. So let's say only one of them was used. You could input the number 1 here. And then here's where you'd want to indicate the hours used. So let's say this aggregate spreader was used for 8 hours. You could input that there. And in the remarks field, let's say one of the aggregate spreaders was down. You could input here, one aggregate spreader down. So really, this is where this comes into play. Let's say a contractor comes back in 6 months and says there was 2 aggregate spreaders on site that day and they charged you for 2. You're able to come in here, pull up this information and say, yes, 2 were on site, but only 1 was used because 1 aggregate spreader was down and let's say it was broken. Those are things you're able to notate in that remarks field. And then similar to how you want to tag the contractor for the personnel, you want to tag whichever contractor, let's say we'll go with Barber Brothers again. It was their aggregate spreader. So those are the things that you want to tag in the system every day for equipment. And then the last thing you want to tag is, maybe which line item was that aggregate spreader working on that day. So here in my line item, see if I can, I'll just select a random one, but you'd also want to associate the line item, whatever that equipment was working on that day. Okay. So one thing I wanted to again show in the spreadsheets, I'm actually going to pop back to the contract personnel for a second. Let's say these same crews, this asphalt milling crew, these carpenters, and this asphalt roadway crew. Let's say those same people are going to be on site tomorrow. Instead of having to come in and recreate the wheel, if you will, you can clone that forward, just like you can do in the journal with those observation types. Let's say if I click my select button here, and I know the asphalt milling crew, the carpenters, and the roadway crew are going to be on site tomorrow. If I select all 3 of those, and if I come to the bottom of my screen where it says edit labels, oh no, I'm sorry, not edit labels. If I click, whoops. So if I select all and I click clone, let's say I know those same 3 crews are going to be on site to tomorrow. I can change that to tomorrow's date. And if I tap away, it's going to ask me if I want to proceed with cloning. And if I click yes, it's going to create an observation for me for tomorrow. And it brings forward, if I scroll through, it brings forward all of that all that information for me. So it brought through the personnel type, the number of people, the hours worked, and it brought forward all the tags. So that is a huge time saver. If the same crew is going to be on site all week, you're able to pull that, you're able to clone that forward. If you know, maybe this site's on crew this week or this crew's on site this week, and then they're, you know, not on site for a couple weeks, but then they come back. You could search, pull up that previous date, and you can pull the information forward. So again, cloning and bulk tagging are two time-saving features for you for anyone in the field. So did that make sense how I clone that forward?
Yes.
So again, cloning, a big time saver, and you can clone that forward for a whole week if you wanted to. And then, like I said, if it did, for whatever reason, changed, if they're, you know, tomorrow, let's say the asphalt milling crew, let's say there was only 4 people on site, you are able to edit that information. So it's not locked in place, but it is a way to pull it forward. Okay. So any questions on that?
No.
Okay. So the last one we're going to get into today is your work item or your line item quantity tracking. So I just clicked into that work item spreadsheet. And let's say I'm going to create an observation here. So I will click that green plus. So the first thing you're going to want to select here is line item. So whatever the controlling work item or the item for that day was, select that line item here. So I think we used clearing and grubbing earlier. So I'm going to select clearing and grubbing here, and I'll tap away. And if I scroll over here, you see this place quantity in units. The units are going to automatically populate for you based on the line item that you select. So really, all you're responsible for inputting here is the place quantity. So if there was 2 linear feet of something laid on the project or whatever it was, whatever the place quantity is, you just enter that in this place quantity field. So I'll just enter 1 here, and then you do see you have your as-built quantity measured indicator, location, you know, you have these other options that you can fill in. So that from station, from offset to station to offset, those are free entry fields. You can enter there to get, you know, to get very specific on maybe where something was laid. And then that remarks field, again, that's another free entry field. So if you have anything additional you want notated, you can put it in that remarks field. And then again, your same tag and those contractor, you know, both of those drop downs are the same as they are in the other spreadsheets and in the journal. So really, at the end of every day, you want to make sure you have your weather, your personnel, your equipment, and your work item, your quantities tracked in the system. If there are 2 line items that are worked on in a given day, you know, you can just add another observation and you could select that line item. And then you would track the quantities for that.
Hey, Casey, I have something to say about the spreadsheets.
Yeah.
So I want everybody on this call to understand the purpose of the training today. This is a very basic Fieldbook training, but Site Manager has some very specific rules on what it will accept when you're putting in your contract personnel, equipment, and work items. And so we're not covering that stuff today. We probably will have some videos in the future where we're covering that. And I, you know, if you have questions, you can always contact me and I'll go over with you personally. But just be aware, like when you're entering this stuff, there are some things that Site Manager won't accept. And I'll just give you a quick example. So on this screen here, where we have an asphalt milling crew, if you had 2 listings of asphalt milling crews for the same contractor, Site Manager would reject your report when you send it in. Like it won't accept 2 of the same type. And so those are the types of rules that I'm talking about. And it's very specific for contracted personnel, equipment, and for work items. And so just know this is the basic part. And you know, you enter your work items the way you think you're supposed to enter them for now. But please have a more experienced inspector who has been doing work items and equipment kind of go over your reports and show you some of that stuff, or contact me, you know, to check it. Because you will get rejected reports, and that's a little difficult to deal with, especially when you're new. So,
To say the least.
yes, Casey knows what I'm talking about.
None here. Thank you.
Okay. So the final thing that you are responsible for every day in HeadLight is creating your your DWR. So that's a culmination of everything that you do in the system every day, and you can do that in one click. The first time you do it, it's going to be a few clicks, but on the left-hand navigation on my screen, you see where it's the new white plus. If you
Right.
click that new white plus and you click edit favorites, and this isn't something you have to remember, we can always help you guys get this set up that first time. If you click edit favorites, and then if you click my daily, you should see that green check next to it. And then now you should also see it on the left hand of my screen. So if I click done there, adding that My Daily button, this My Daily button is what you'll click at the end of the day. And in one click, it's going to compile everything you do in the system into a report for you. That My Daily button, if you're on multiple projects, you do have to add it to every single project that you're on, but it's just a one-time thing. So it's project specific. But now if I come over and if I click that My Daily button one time, this pulled in everything that I did in Fieldbook today. So it pulled in everything I did in the journal and it pulled in everything in the spreadsheet. So my personnel spreadsheet, my equipment, it pulled in my images, pulled in all 7 of my narratives, and it pulled in my weather and the work items. So if I click, once you create your report, you can click this download PDF just to make sure that everything is in here for you, and it'll put it into PDF format for you. Let's hope mine does, as I don't have great internet right now. But so it should load. Okay, so it did. So if you see in the top right-hand corner, this is just the training project, but that little header will be your project. You can see your name will be the project inspector. You see your high, your low, your AM, your PM conditions. You can see that little kind of validation section, what's included in this report. We have images, we have contract personnel, we have equipment, and we have work items. You can see your site manager remarks here are those 7 narratives we created, work hours, general remarks, all the way through staff detail. You can see your diary section. If I scroll down even further here, you can see your work items. So that's what you did in the spreadsheets. You will see the contract personnel, the equipment, and the weather. And then if I scroll all the way down to the end of my report, you'd see all the images. So like you can see even this, picture of my desk that I took. You can see my title, that description field, when it was taken, what date, and then all the tags that were associated with it. So typically this is what you want your DWR to look like every day. You want to make sure you have your pictures. But as long as you're using that My Daily button, it's going to pull everything in that you did for that day. So any questions on the report so far?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So let's say my report is complete and I'm ready to submit it. If I click back to app here, the final thing you have to do is just click submit. And this, once it goes through its process, it would submit. And then whoever's responsible for reviewing this, so let's say that's your PE, they would then know that, let's say this was my report for the day, they could come into this reports tab and they would see Casey's report for today has been submitted. The PE or whoever's responsible for reviewing it can then go in, they can review it, make sure everything is there, and then as long as it's authorized here, approved or reviewed here, it would sync to Site Manager. So again, as long as you have that My Daily button added, and when everyone does, for the people that don't have their Site Manager or HeadLight credentials, like we said, we are going to share this out for everybody. But we'll make sure to send out, we have a best practices sheet. We can send that out to everybody and we can send directions for getting that My Daily button added. So like Les said, this training today is really just designed to get your feet wet, get you familiar with the system. When everybody is set up, they will have access to this training project. So like we said, you are able to come back in here and go through everything. One thing I do want to call out is that today we were in the training project. So if you can see at the top of my screen where it says LADOTD Training 2.0, that's the name of the project. So if you do click that, I've only given myself access to this training project, but if you have multiple projects, if let's say you're on 2 or 3 projects, if you click the name of the project, there would be multiple projects in this list here, and you can change from project to project. So you will, if you need to, you can have multiple projects on your iPad, but you'll always have access to this training project to come in here and play around. You can't break anything. So we definitely encourage you to play around in the training project as you familiarize yourself with the app. All right. Well, thanks everyone. I will come off screen. If anyone does have any questions, I'll drop my email in the chat. So you can reach out to me anytime. We do have another training session again at the end of the month. I believe it's on the 27th. So if anyone does want to get added to that, feel free to email me and I can get you added to that. You can even just pop in if you have questions. Don't hesitate to reach out. Be sure to use that HeadLight Academy. As you're starting out, you do have this available on the iPad and on the computer. And good luck out there in the field, and definitely let us know if you have any questions. Les, is there anything else you wanted to add?
I just wanted to tell you thank you. Appreciate you doing these trainings for us.
Of course. We got the first one, so let's hope it actually recorded, Les. But Rudy, really thanks so much for your participation.
No, thank you.
Like I said, gold
Thanks for
star
putting up with me.
Yeah. Les, I can see Rudy being on our newsletter spotlight.
I know we need to do
Maybe in a
that.
couple months.
We love participation. Thanks, Rudy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all. Thanks very much.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone else, not just to Rudy, but thanks for joining. Thanks for spending the morning with us, and we'll share the recording as soon as it's ready.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
All right. Later.
Bye, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye.